They say everything can change in a moment, and sometimes it does. In the blink of an eye, the ground trembles, the sky darkens, and the silence is pierced by chaos. The world turns its head, eyes wide open, trying to grasp what just happened. A headline appears: Iranian attack. Mossad and Israeli army headquarters destroyed. Suddenly, the noise outside isn't just sound, it becomes emotion. Fear, rage, confusion, triumph for some, tragedy for others. But in that moment, as the dust rises and the world shouts, there is one question that each of us must answer individually. Can you remain still inside while the world breaks apart outside? Because that's the real test. The outer world, we don't control it as much as we think we do. Governments fall, empires rise, buildings are erased, leaders vanish, decisions are made in boardrooms, war rooms, behind closed doors. But none of that gives us control. It only gives us illusion, a fragile sense of certainty that disappears when the unexpected happens. And so the question remains, where do we stand when certainty leaves? The answer is not out there. It never was. It's not found in retaliations, in counter strikes, in speeches of blame or honor. It's found in the space between your thoughts, in the breath you take before you react, in the moment where you feel everything, but choose not to be ruled by it. That is stillness. That is power, to witness destruction and not be destroyed inside. That is a rare strength. And it does not come by accident. It's forged in silence, in discipline, in understanding the difference between what happens and what we do with what happens. Because the event is just that, an event. The reaction, that is who we are. Now, understand this is not about apathy. This is not numbness. It's not pretending the pain isn't real or the loss isn't deep. It's about not letting that pain blind you, not letting loss make decisions for you. The one who remains still inside isn't cold, they are precise. They do not rush into noise, they listen deeper. They act when it is time to act, and when they move, it is with clarity, not chaos. Let's go back to that moment, the attack, the destruction. When the buildings fall, some people stand up immediately, ready to strike back. But they don't see clearly. Their eyes are clouded by rage. They call it justice. But justice without clarity is just revenge in disguise. Others fall into despair. They see the ruins and believe all hope is lost. They become prisoners of fear. But then there are a few, not many, who feel the fear, see the destruction, acknowledge the pain, and yet they do not panic. They breathe, they wait. They listen not to the news, not to the politicians, but to something deeper. The inner voice, the one that doesn't shout, but whispers. Those are the people who shape what comes next. Not the loudest, not the angriest, but the clearest. Because when you stop needing to control everything, you realize something powerful. You already have control over the most important battlefield, yourself. That's where it begins. And if you can stand firm there, while everything else shakes, then you are unshakable. That kind of strength cannot be taken by missiles or lost to borders. It isn't built by governments, and it isn't destroyed by wars. It's a force cultivated slowly, through discipline, through daily choices, through awareness. And it is that force that will decide what the world becomes after the headlines fade. Because make no mistake, the world will write many more headlines. Some will shock us, some will make us cheer. Others will break our hearts. But the real story, the one that matters, is not written on screens or in newspapers. It's written in how we choose to show up when the world falls apart. When others react, you respond. When others hate, you understand. When others burn, you carry water. And if you can do that, if you can stay still within, then no matter what happens, you are free. While the world shakes, most people shout. They shout in anger, in fear, in pride. They demand to be heard. They demand to be seen. And in that noise, in that overwhelming flood of voices, commands, broadcasts, declarations, something is lost. Something vital. It's not the next strategic plan. It's not a military advantage. What's lost is wisdom. Because violence is loud. It screams through the air, crashes through buildings, flashes across headlines. Violence demands attention. It wants eyes. It wants followers. It wants to dominate the space. But wisdom does not need to be loud. It doesn't raise its voice. It doesn't compete. It waits. It watches. It listens. And when the moment comes when all the shouting leads to nothing but silence, that is when wisdom finally speaks. And those who are listening, they hear it. Most people aren't listening, they're reacting. And that's the difference between chaos and clarity. Between destruction and discipline. You see, the strongest warriors I've ever met were not the ones who entered the room with weapons drawn and voices raised. They were the ones who stepped forward with calm eyes, who measured the space between noise and action. Not because they were weak, but because they were focused. In today's world, when you hear about destruction like the kind we speak of, institutions gone, military powerhouses crippled, everyone rushes to fill the silence with opinions. Who is to blame? Who should answer for it? What should happen next? It becomes a game of momentum, pushing harder and faster without pausing to understand what has already happened. But when wisdom is your compass, you don't follow noise. You ask better questions. You stop asking who shouted the loudest, and instead you ask, who stayed silent and why? Not out of fear, but out of discipline. Not out of apathy, but out of patience. Because silence is not always absence. Sometimes it is presence. A deep presence that watches everything, feels everything, and yet doesn't flinch. This is the kind of presence that prevents you from being pulled by every wave of emotion. This is the kind of presence that lets you see clearly even when everyone else is blinded by noise. And you can feel it, can't you? In moments of high emotion, the temptation is to match the energy of the world. Someone hits, you want to hit back harder. Someone speaks, you want to speak louder. But strength is not in the echo. It's in the pause. It's in being able to feel the impulse and not obey it. It's in letting others scream past you while you walk in stillness, rooted like a mountain. The loudest voices don't build anything lasting. They build temporary flames that burn hot and fade quickly. But the quiet mind, the mind that observes, that reflects, that waits, that mind builds something permanent. It builds understanding, and from understanding comes right action. Let's bring this back to the moment. The headlines, the rubble, the anger rising on both sides. Now ask yourself, what is needed most right now? More shouting, more reaction, or stillness? Not passive stillness, not weakness, but the kind of stillness that can see through fire and smoke and still point in the right direction. That is rare. That is power. There are people, even now, sitting in dark rooms, making decisions that will affect the lives of millions. Some are driven by panic. Some are driven by pride. But a few, and I mean a very few, are not driven at all. They are guided, not by noise, but by wisdom. And they're not rushing. They're watching. They're listening. And when they speak, the whole room stops. Not because they yell, but because their silence before they spoke carried more weight than all the noise combined. You must decide who you want to be. When the world is loud, do you become louder? Or do you become clearer? Because noise will always be there. Crisis will always return. But the question is whether you can live in the eye of the storm, completely aware, totally awake, and act only when necessary, with precision, not panic. In a world obsessed with action, there is something profoundly powerful about restraint. Knowing you can strike, but choosing not to, not out of fear, not out of hesitation, but out of clarity. That is the warrior spirit we speak of. That is what separates reaction from wisdom. When violence shakes the earth and the world goes blind, the wise do not panic. They see, they wait, and when they move, they do not miss. They speak once, and that is enough. Power is a strange thing. We think it looks like missiles, like governments, like satellites in the sky or secret intelligence hidden beneath layers of concrete. We think power is what can be measured, how many troops, how many weapons, how many files locked away behind digital walls. But that kind of power, as you've seen, can disappear in an instant. One coordinated strike, one act of force, and it crumbles. So, what kind of power remains? You see, the real power is not always the one that's visible. It's not always the one you can count or photograph or name in public. The real power, the one that shapes outcomes, that controls the rhythm of everything that comes next, is often invisible. And because it's invisible, most people overlook it. They don't train it, they don't cultivate it, they don't even respect it, until it's the only thing left standing. Let's look at what happened. Mossad, Israeli military infrastructure, known worldwide for their intelligence, precision, and security, taken down. The world gasps, shock ripples. People start asking, how could something so powerful fall? But that question comes from a misunderstanding. Because what we often call power is just form, just structure, just the outer shell, and anything with form can be broken. True power is formless. You can't drop a bomb on discipline. You can't assassinate awareness. You can't launch a missile against someone who's trained their mind to be calm under chaos. That kind of strength doesn't live in headquarters or governments or agencies. It lives inside people. Quiet people, patient people, people who have mastered the art of being unmoved by what is loud and uncontrollable. When something explodes, the average person either flinches or cheers, both reactions of someone being pulled by external events. But the one who holds true power doesn't flinch, doesn't cheer, they absorb, they read, they observe the shape of things without becoming shaped by them. That's not indifference, that's mastery. In silence, power grows. In solitude, it sharpens. People chase titles and control, but the most dangerous person in the room is the one who doesn't need any of it to feel complete. They've already done the hard work, the invisible work, the kind of work that doesn't come with praise or headlines, the kind of work that requires staring at your own weaknesses until they dissolve, the kind of work that turns emotion into focus and chaos into clarity. And this matters now more than ever, because what just happened wasn't only a military failure. It was a spiritual one. It exposed how much we rely on external structures to feel safe. When those structures fall, most people collapse with them. But not everyone. Some remain standing. Not because they had better weapons or smarter strategies, but because they built themselves on something deeper than steel or stone. You don't need to be part of an army to understand this. You just need to look at your own life. Ask yourself, where is my power? Is it in how others see me? Is it in my job, my money, my connections? If those were all stripped away tomorrow, what would be left? Because there are people walking this world who own nothing, and yet they are stronger than kings. There are warriors who have never touched a weapon, but they've trained their breath, their thoughts, their intentions so deeply that no attack can reach them where it matters most. This isn't philosophy. This is reality. The visible world is unstable. Systems fall. Leaders vanish. Fortresses collapse, and the ones who survive, the ones who rise after the dust, are not always the ones with the biggest armies. They're the ones who learned to command themselves. You see, when you command yourself, you don't need to be loud. You don't need to retaliate to prove your strength. You become like water, shapeless, flexible, impossible to break. People underestimate you. They don't see you coming, and that's your advantage, because in a world obsessed with showing power, Being unseen is the highest form of it. But don't confuse this with passivity. This is not about hiding. It's about preparation. It's about being so aligned within that you no longer need the world to move in your favor. You become your own center of gravity. You become the constant in a world of variables. The real war is not out there. It's not between flags or ideologies. The real war is fought between reaction and restraint, between illusion and insight, between outer noise and inner silence. And the one who wins that war doesn't need to raise a flag, because they've already won something far greater, themselves. The most powerful structure is the one no one can see and no one can destroy. When the dust settles and the fires have burned out, all that's left is the silence. The ruins, the empty streets, the hollow spaces where once there was movement, communication, life. It's in these moments, after the destruction, after the chaos, after the breaking, that something crucial happens. Something we don't talk about enough. The world moves on to the next headline. But you are still standing there, surrounded by what's been lost. And the question appears not in the news, not from others, but from within. What now? Because no matter which side you're on, no matter what flag you stood under or what history you believed in, war always leaves the same aftermath, the necessity to rebuild. But rebuild what exactly? More walls, more weapons, another strategy to destroy the next enemy faster. That's what the world usually does. That's the cycle humanity has lived in for thousands of years. Something breaks, and instead of breaking the pattern, we repeat it. But maybe, just maybe, this is the moment to do something different. After destruction, something inside every one of us has to decide. Do I carry this pain forward? Do I let it shape me into something harder, colder, more reactive? Or do I use it differently? Not to repeat history, but to learn from it. Not to build another fortress, but to build a foundation inside myself that doesn't need fortresses anymore. You see, when everything falls apart, you meet yourself. There's no one else to distract you, no noise to drown out your thoughts. You are left with what you are, no more, no less. That's not a punishment, that's an invitation. Because from rubble, the self can rise. But only if you're willing to go into that silence, face the mess, and stay long enough to find your own strength underneath it. Most people want to skip that part. They want to move fast, rebuild quickly, get back to normal. But what was normal before this? A world on edge, a world reactive, a world where power meant fear, and peace was just a pause between attacks. That's not worth rebuilding. So what if instead of rebuilding the world the same way, you rebuilt yourself differently? From pain, patience, from loss, perspective, from chaos, clarity. That's the true rebuild. The kind no one else sees but everyone feels when they're near you. Because when you rise from your own destruction, not just physically, but spiritually, you don't just survive. You transform. This isn't about being perfect. It's not about pretending the attack didn't happen or that it didn't affect you. It's about acknowledging the impact, letting it move through you, and choosing to shape it into something constructive. When you've been shattered and you slowly start putting the pieces back together, you realize you don't have to rebuild the same shape you were before. You can become something new, stronger, softer, wiser, and that's your power. There will always be those who choose to rise just to strike back, who rebuild themselves into sharper weapons. But that cycle is empty. It never ends. They win one battle, but lose the one that actually matters, the one inside. Because what's the point of winning if you're still ruled by fear, by hatred? If your heart is just a battlefield waiting for the next war? True rebuilding is internal. It means learning to sit with what hurt you, not to relive it endlessly, but to understand it, to see how it shaped you, and to choose consciously whether it still belongs in your story. Some things don't. And letting them go doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from being defined by them. You are not the damage. You are not the ashes. You are the one standing up from them. But understand, this rising isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It doesn't post about itself or demand attention. It happens slowly, quietly, day by day, breath by breath, until one morning you realize you're no longer walking with the weight of what was. You're walking with the wisdom of what you've learned, and that's unshakable, because when you rise like that, not to dominate, but to embody, the world feels it. You become a mirror for others, a possibility, a reason to believe that maybe, just maybe, we don't have to keep repeating the same history over and over. So, the next time something breaks, whether it's in the world or inside your life, don't rush to fix it. Don't rush to rebuild what was. Instead, take a moment, sit with the silence, ask yourself not how do I get back, but what do I want to rise into now?